Welcome back to Marathon Phoenix Commentary. My name is Ryoko TK. We are going to be watching episode 11. The following level is going to be A Change of Seasons. This level is a very straightforward level. The objective is that you're supposed to find an uplink chip and then put it in the appropriate spot in order to sort of hack into the computer systems. This is an extremely linear level. In other words, you're pretty much given the uplink chip, and then you're pretty much funneled to the point where you're supposed to insert it. This level exists as a playground for the fusion mortar, which you're looking at right now. I just picked it up. Well, if I hadn't had it already, I would have just picked it up. And most of the encounters in this level are tuned to the fact that you have it now. This is the first of basically 3 levels that are playground levels. In other words, you are given a strong weapon, and the entire level is tuned to the fact that you have this weapon. The other levels are Dark Forces and then Roque Fortress, which are forthcoming. But this is the first level of this nature that I made. As far as weapons go, I think the fusion mortar is probably my favorite. As far as like a balanced situation, the fusion mortar is definitely the one that I'm the happiest with. It's not that strong per explosion, or per shell, I guess. It doesn't really do that much damage, but it does do double damage against machines, just like the fusion cannon does. Which means it's generally useful, but of course, in any sort of encounter where you're fighting a handful of mechanical enemies as well, such as hunters or defenders, it's among the best possible weapons. So almost all of the encounters on this level are sort of tuned to the fact that you have one. Because of course you have it, you just picked it up. So that was about half of the purpose of this level, is to give you sort of encounters where you're going to use this level. This is a very linear level. There's not a whole lot going on in this level other than you going through sort of the set pieces one by one. This level, and I'm going to use major air quotes here, this level is historically significant because it is the first level that I know of that was textured by the program visualmode.lua. As a little bit of a history lesson here, actually as a major history lesson here, in case people aren't really familiar with it, for the longest time, marathon mapping was done with the program Forge. Forge is a program that operates in classic Mac OS. In other words, Mac operating systems before version 10 or version X. Because, of course, that's the operating system that Marathon operated in Marathon Infinity. And the mapping program, like I said, was called Forge. And it was tuned for the application, or the executable, as it were, for Marathon Infinity, which means that it was limited by certain restrictions such as viewing distance and number of objects on the map and the size of the map and stuff like that. Issues about the size of the map wouldn't be addressed until the program Wayland was created, which is a cross-platform map editor. But before that was created, well, let me backpedal a little bit. About a quarter of the Phoenix maps were made entirely from start to finish in Forge, which, as I said, was the classic Mac OS map editor. And since I mostly operate in Windows nowadays, this was done by emulating OS 7 and creating the maps in OS 7 as emulated on my Windows computer. This had a handful of problems. The first and foremost problem being, of course, that I was fucking emulating Mac OS 7 on a computer that was built in the mid-2000s. But the program Forge was tuned for the Marathon Infinity application rather than Aleph 1, which meant that it had hard-coded in it the limitations that the Marathon engine had hard-coded in it. Which meant, of course, that the map size as a number of polygons, and for those of you that are not familiar with Marathon, polygon is roughly synonymous with a sector in Doom or build. and it also, like, it limited you to a certain set of textures, like map textures and stuff like that. And you could only put so many objects on the map, and objects were like monsters and items and sound generating objects and stuff like that. And this map was made at the advent of the program VisualMode.lua, which is a map texturing tool that is a script that can be loaded in Aleph 1, which, of course, as you know, if you were playing the game, is the program that you use to actually play the game. This was really important because rather than having to load the map in Forge, which was a very antiquated program, you could load it in Marathon or in Aleph 1, which is up to date and has limitations that Aleph 1 has, rather than the limitations that Marathon Infinity has. And that's really only important. Well, actually, it's important for a few reasons. The first reason is that it doesn't have the limitations on map complexity or viewing distance that Forge does. If you ever try to texture a map in Forge, okay, actually, let me backpedal and talk about map making terminology here. So textures are the colorations or the patterns that are applied to all of the surfaces here, floor, walls, and ceiling. Those are known as textures. And they, in older games such as this one, they came in sets presumably because of virtual memory. I don't know anything about computers, okay? It's probably a memory problem. And on a computer built in 1994, that computer's graphics card could probably only hold so many textures on it before it would melt. So all the textures were divided into sets. And in Marathon, they were all themed, or I guess I should say Marathon 2 and Marathon Infinity, because I never mapped for the original Marathon 1. But they were probably themed, so there was water textures, and there were lava textures, and there were 4 textures, and stuff like that. And so they all were based around a theme. And one of the big limitations that was removed with the advent of Aleph 1 is the idea of a texture set, because of course Aleph 1 is being played on a modern computer, and a computer built in say 2013, like the computer that I'm using to make the footage for this game, that computer can hold more than 20 textures that are 128 pixels to a side. That is not really a feat. So Aleph 1 removes that limitation, and it can hold all of the textures that are available to it without any sort of difficulty. So that's one of the restrictions that are removed and that actually showcase in this map. But another one of the restrictions, of course, is viewing distance, which is no problem on a modern computer, and of course map complexity. By map complexity, I refer to the number of visible polygons at any point. Like I said earlier in this video, a polygon is roughly equitable to a sector in Doom or the Build engine, and Build is like Duke Nukem 3D. That was a major thing that would slow the game down, and of course it still does if your map is complex enough, but in Phoenix that is not really an issue. I hope. I'm kind of rambling in this video, but the central point is this. This was the first single-player map that I know of that was made when VisualMode.lua was created, which was the script that allowed you to texture maps in the Aleph 1 application rather than texturing maps in Forge, since Aleph 1 did not have the limitations that Forge does. As a result, this map prominently features multiple texture sets and very long viewing distances, which would be very difficult, if not impossible, to make in Forge. Chronologically speaking, this is the first map in the scenario that does that. There are other maps that were made well after VML was a thing. Vampire Killer is one of them. I'm pretty sure Neo New Mordor is another one that does it in a more subtle way, but this one does it very prominently. And it does it prominently because the first half of the level is done in the water texture set, which of course is the canyon area and the starting area. All of the light tans that you're looking at right now, like this is water. This is all part of the water texture set. And the water texture set has a lot of gentle colors and stuff like that. And the other half of the map is done in the sewage texture set, which is mostly a lot of greens and grays and browns. Colors that you would associate with a sewer. That's how Vanilla Marathon, or Vanilla Marathon 2, delineates texture sets. And this map does both in one half and then the other half. And that's sort of what this map exists to highlight. Nowadays, you wouldn't even notice. You wouldn't even think that was a relevant issue. But back when I made this map, which I guess if I had to spitball, which would be 2010, but honestly, I don't really know. It was a pretty big deal. It was definitely a very big deal to me because I had been making maps for the game for a long time prior to that, and this removed a lot of restrictions and a lot of challenges in map making. I guess if I were going to actually talk about this map in general, I did at the very beginning of this episode, and I'm going to do it right now. I really like this map. It has a lot of very fun encounters. You can use the fusion mortar to really kill a lot of bad guys. That's pretty much it. This is the exit of the level. I actually end up backtracking to a save because I want to have the beginning of the next level in that video rather than this video. But I'm just glad that I got to use this video to talk about sort of map making, or marathon map making history. Such that it is. Anyway, thanks for watching. The next episode is going to be on the level Stone Temple Pilates, which is chronologically one of the last maps that I made for this release of Marathon Phoenix. Thank you for watching.